Yeah, it's Richard Cortez here on Breaking Jazz, Under a Blanket of Blue. That coming from one of the several seasonal EPs to be released by Richard over the course of the coming year. It's a great tune, originally written by Jerry Livingston, Al Nieberg, and Marty Symes. Like I said, most famously performed by Ella Fitzgerald and Louis Armstrong. And I played a version for my audience here on Breaking Jazz from the young upstart vocalist who we think a lot of as well, Tyreek McDowell.
Yes.
A couple of months. That's a great take on that tune too. And I'm so happy to be joined for the second time on Breaking Jazz. We've got a repeat customer. Richard Cortez joins us on the program. Richard, so glad to have you back here, buddy.
I'm grateful to be back. I'm so glad we were able to make it work.
Absolutely. You know, we're like the postal service, neither rain nor sleet, nor sometimes you have an audio technical difficulty. You know what? You take a deep breath and you keep moving on. Because as you know, the show's got to go on, dude.
And we're here.
And we're here. So we started off the set of your music tonight with that great Rodgers and Hammerstein tune from The Sound of Music, Something Good. That's from the new album that was just released basically last week on the La Reserve label.
Yes.
You and Esteban Castro, just voice and piano.
Which was the second duo record of this year, because the first one was with Tyler.
Yes, I remember. You know, it's interesting. So what goes when you were of and I thought that you and Tyler had. Now, Tyler was on your first two recordings, right? He was on Mood Swings as well?
No, he was, Mood Swings was Marius Vandenbrink.
Oh, right. Okay. So now because for a vocalist, choosing an accompanist is serious business. It's like a pitcher in baseball who, you have to trust your catcher. Right. Or else you're not going to have success. And as a vocalist, you have to trust who you're working with. Now, I know that, from speaking to you last time after your sophomore release, I know that you and Tyler had really good chemistry. What went into the thinking to switch things up this time around, or was it just a matter of scheduling and something like that?
Well, Standards in Orbit is actually recorded live. It's technically a live record that is mixed, because if you listen on the track of Something Good, there's a little bit of applause after Esteban solo. I did my best to mix it like a studio record. I wanted it to sound like a studio record, so we didn't do any talking and we didn't do any applause at the end of the songs, the best that we could. And we really tried to minimize any audio of applause in the takes as much as we could. I wanted it to have the feeling, the rawness of a live record and the presence of an audience, but not an actual live record. So, those two dates were dates I had on the books at Birdland, and the album is comprised of takes from two different concerts that Esteban and I did roughly about 6 months apart. So the first one, I asked Tyler to do the performance, the duo performance in the Birdland Theater, and he was unavailable. So I thought about it, and Esteban and I had played when he was 18 or 19 years old, I think. And years later, we reconnected and he played a gig with me and the bassist Russell Hall at Arthur's Tavern. And I just remember walking away from that experience, and I play pretty much full-time live, multiple gigs a month. And so there is a certain component of familiarity with my repertoire and how it's interpreted, and while leaving room for improvisation, being very familiar with the stylization, the style that I perform the music in. And Esteban really pushed the sonic boundary of how the music sounded that night. It was drumless. It was just me, Russell, and Esteban. And I thought, wow, there's something here. There's something really special here. And so I asked Esteban to do it. We met up a couple times. And I just thought I wanted to capture what that sounded like, because in the moment when I heard it the first time, it felt so different for me. And I thought, if I can get this recorded somehow. And so when Esteban and I were putting together the repertoire for the show, I thought, man, would it be okay if I had them record the board? And he was like, sure. So I did that for both shows, and then went through and combed and picked the songs that I liked. And it was 25 songs that I picked from, down to 11.
your catalog is growing sort of exponentially, and I know you've, in addition to Standards in Orbit, you've got a lot of tunes that you're planning to sort of release in I don't, you're giving us like a little piece of cheese at a time, and spreading it out throughout the course of the year, which I think is a cool way to do it. So what was your thinking? What was your thinking around releasing all of these tunes that you've recorded in sort of the EP format, and doing it sort of periodically over the course of a long stretch, as opposed to maybe just releasing a standard studio LP or two?
Well, the record will repopulate in March of 2027 as a whole thing. So the concept is to kind of like, I just feel like the listener has changed so much since I first started putting out music. I first started putting out my own original music in 2004. So beyond prior to my working in the arena of jazz voice. So people used to go buy CDs and sit with liner notes and be with the material in a way that was far more intimate and present. And I feel like in this space where everything is moving so quickly, trickling it in a little bit at a time, I think gives people, like in 20-minute segments, it's just enough for people to listen to the whole thing in one train ride or in one car ride or whatever, and not feel inundated with like all of this information. Because I think full-length records, it's often a shame how so much of the material just doesn't get listened to because they're not singles or they're not standout tracks, and people don't listen to things straight through. It's one of the reasons why I purchased a lot of vinyl, because if I'll put it on and I won't be able to move the needle around a whole ton, that's not really the way that I listen to records. So when I put vinyl on, I let the whole thing play through both sides, and sometimes it introduces me to material or things that I don't even realize that I wanted to hear. So I think with this, I knew I wanted to do seasonal songs, because after Standards in Orbit and Nightbird, both of them being duo records and both having versions of Body and Soul on them, I knew I was going to return to a larger sound. And if I was going to spend all of the money to make my own record again, I wanted to make sure that it had as many ears on it as possible, spacing it out throughout the year. So the seasons was just the vehicle, but the speaking components came later. And that was something that initially it was just supposed to be 24 tracks, and then I went in the studio with Addison and Ruben first. What you just played is the sextet works on these EPs, but there's also a whole other component of it that is just me, piano and saxophone, because I'm so attached to the idea of how intimately I can perform this rep. And when you start to add drums and bass and horns and all these things, it's just a bigger sound, sort of like mood swings, which is a beautiful thing. It's just, now I'm getting known for this very soft Chet Baker. People compare me to Chet Baker constantly. I don't even play the trumpet, but they just have this thing where they hear the softness of my voice and the softness of the delivery, and I didn't want to abandon that on this project, so I almost married Mood Swings and Nightbird into this one thing. And so I recorded those songs first. We recorded, I think, 10 songs in 4 hours or something like that. And then months later, after I had mixed those tunes, I went into the studio with like a bigger vision of the songs that I wanted to do.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad that you're telling me that it's going to come out as a full-length record too, ultimately, because like you, and I totally agree, in our day-to-day, whether we're on the train or in the car or whatever, we often don't take the time to listen to an album from start to finish. But there was obviously a time, as you recognize, when there was meaning to be found. There was the artist's purpose was to present to you a narrative that unfolded over the course of an entire record, and there were hidden delights to be found by consuming,
like sandwiching them between hits.
Correct. So I personally, as a music lover and as a lover particularly of your music, am excited that the whole thing will be coming out, and I think this is a cool way that you're doing it. I want to switch gears a little bit, because what you said about your voice and the style you're really becoming known for, this very sort of almost an intimacy. There's a rawness to it, and there's a real vulnerability to it. I've talked about this last time, and for that reason, I think you're one of the most intriguing voices on the scene today. But also, I think what you have is something that a lot of singers spend a lifetime chasing, which is a signature sound. For me, a listener need only to hear a note or two of something that you're doing, and right away. That's Richard Cortez. Now,
for better or for worse.
Hey, right. Now, correct. Now, to me, that's particularly interesting because I know you didn't follow the conventional path. You didn't go to jazz college or conservatory or Betty Carter's whatever, and you seem to be kind of is there such thing as an outsider artist anymore? I mean, but my point is, like, without that, how did you cultivate this very, I mean, because your style is a refined style. How did you come to cultivate this refined, or was it, hey, this was the first thing I kind of went with and that's what people latched onto?
I mean, I've been recording my own voice. So I used to build little makeshift studios in my studio apartments, or all of my stuff was very DIY before I started working in the jazz genre and interpreting these songs. So I knew the difference between live performance voice and recording voice. I would do take after take after take after take of recording my own vocals at 3 o'clock in the morning in my studio apartment. So I understood the nuance of studio work. And I think just like over the years, like with jazz specifically, I mean, I learned the hard way, which was getting vibed. I mean, there's a lot of this is going to sound so not woke, but it's just, there's a lot of toxic positivity in the arts. I think that there's a lot of there's space for everybody, and you sound amazing, that sort of affirming things. And a lot of people took me aside that are very established and celebrated musicians in this music, and were like, if you seem like you really love this, so I'm going to tell you why it doesn't sound good.
Yeah. I mean,
that helped me. It helped me so much. It's not, that approach is not for everybody, but I'm from the streets. I'm of the streets.
Yeah.
So I like it. Shooting from the hip, give it to me straight. And those people were the people. I had a very celebrated bass player whose name I won't say sit me down, and we went out for coffee. It was pretty early on when I was singing standards, and he was like, "You want to be a full-time jazz artist?" And I said, "Yeah." He grabbed my phone and he's like, "Quit your job right now. Call them." Now, did I do that? No. But what I understood, the stakes he was talking about. I had a singer that I really look up to come up to me after we were on a gig together, and she was like, "You can sing a ballad kind of, but you can't swing. Nice to meet you." Like that kind of stuff. And it really, I don't condone that sort of thing, but I think that beneath the surface of that messaging is somebody caring enough to tell you, and for me it worked.
And it takes courage. It takes courage to be real with people and to tell the truth.
It.
Yeah, no doubt.
I mean, I had somebody that I look up to so much, a piano player who I really, really, really profoundly respect, and they told me, your phrasing is terrible. You're breathing in all the wrong places. And these were little gifts of people that were like bumper lanes that were bouncing me back to center and trying to help me figure out my own sound based on my adoration for them and my respect for them, And I think a lot of times, in contemporary, once you start to put the policies, procedures, and restrictions of a college on an art form that comes from back rooms, bars, and hookers and drugs and thieves, and I say that in loving ways,
Of course,
that's what makes the music so amazing.
Everybody look. Jazz was born in Storyville in the whorehouses of New Orleans.
Correct. And so with that being said, once you start to put up, well, you can't say that to a student. You can't say that to a student. You have to go the softer, gentler. It sort of takes this things evolve, and I don't mean to be a purist or only a, like, I think that there's space for both. And I would rather personally in my own artist development have somebody tell me the truth, because that's what's going to get me back to the shed. And a lot of it came from, like, I mean, right now, I would say that I'm celebrated in a lot of ways for my capacity to hold a long, straight tone. And
Mm.
I was not able to do that until that singer told me vibrato is not jazz. You have to shift the way that you sing. And I went home and I practiced droning a straight tone with no vibrato over and over and over again.
That really has become one of your hallmarks.
And it's because I was told that that's what jazz voice sounds like. The difference between, I think Mel Torme, I'm paraphrasing what exactly he said, but he mentions like the difference between, a jazz singer and a pop singer is vibrato.
Interesting. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure that I've ever heard it put like that. But that makes sense. Let me ask you this, and I know that you are very forthright about your personal identity being a big part of who you are as a musician. I guess to put it most simply, why is that important? Why is that important to you? Why is it important, for instance, to be a gay jazz vocalist? Why is it important to make people aware of that, as opposed to, that being a secondary part of who you are or whatever?
It's funny because when I first started, I was really radical about it, because I came into the jazz world through the gay world. I mean, I worked in nightlife. I was a sex worker and a stripper, and found this music and knew nothing about performing it or how to run a band or what any of that meant, as we talked about the last time I was on the show. And when I came into the jazz spaces, I was like, there's no gay people here. This is so weird. This is like 8 years ago. I was like, this is really bizarre, because the music is pulled from Broadway show tunes. So I just kind of thought, where are the gay people?
Right.
And then I realized,
Right.
this is just a space that hasn't been tapped into in that way. And I don't know how to not be me in my life. So I don't know how to not be me in the music. Now, there are
Sure.
specific things
Right.
that I've done strategically. Like, I took all of the gay language off my website, because as my career has grown, I've needed to procure more bookings. And frankly, you don't know who voted for who, or who has what belief system. And so, like, I'm a firm believer of, like, yelling on the outside of the wall is never going to get you on the inside making changes. You have to you got to do the Trojan horse effect. You have to assimilate,
Mm-hmm.
infiltrate, and then manipulate and make shifts. That's the way that you do it. And so for me, like, I've always tried to find ways to be malleable and bend in a way that allows me through the back door or through a crack in the door. And that way I can say, you didn't think this was going to work, but it works. You have to trust me. But standing on the outside of something and saying, this is not fair, it's never going to get you on the inside where you want to be.
Yeah, and I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm getting you wrong, but I think when you talk about, manipulating from the inside, it's not insidious in the manner of the Trojan horse. It's not meant to be deceptive. I think it's just the belief that once people meet you and hear you and understand what you're about as an artist and as a man, that they will respect you and their attitudes will change because of that.
I just think that in an economy where people are constantly relying on ticket sales and trying to keep their venues open and trying to move from month to month, like, taking a risk on something that looks adverse in any way in a time and in a genre where it's hard enough to get people to come out to see live jazz, period, and then you put it in the middle of Michigan or in the middle of Ohio or whatever. And then it's like, okay, well, if we throw the word gay on it, that automatically starts to throw a wrench in the works of how this all moves as something that is supposed to be easy to digest. So I think, like, it's not manipulative in the sense of the only way that I'm trying to manipulate it is to push the boundary a little bit, you know? And there are younger gay musicians that reach out to me all the time and tell me that I've created spaces for them or have given them the okay, whether or not we've ever even met, for them to just occupy the spaces themselves and not worry about it. I mean, I got a DM the other day. In fact, let me read it to you. I got a DM the other day from someone. I sent it to the label, and it was a person that said they went to jazz school and studied jazz voice. Here, I'll read it. It's right here. It says, "This is going to sound a bit random, but I just discovered that you're from Miami. I'm a Cuban, but Miami is my home and I really love your music. And there aren't many modern male jazz vocalists, especially queer men, doing what you're doing. I went to school for jazz voice, but haven't sung jazz again since then. I've struggled with my relationship with such a beautiful genre because as a Hispanic queer man, I've often felt like there wasn't a place for me in it. I wanted to say that I love what you're doing. Congrats on the new album. I plan to look at some standards again." That in itself is like, if I ever left a mark on this music, it may not be for sounding amazing, it may not be for any, but if I did something socio-political within this vastly socio-political and impactful music by helping move and expand the genre to be more contemporary in how the music is presented, right? That will have been enough for me.
Well, Richard, that is pretty darn cool, and yeah, and you're right. I mean, that is powerful stuff. So, you know, I congratulate you for that. But I mean, you know, certainly you're with your chops and your approach to the music and your way of connecting with an audience. You've earned it, I think, and I see only good things ahead. But you know, it's interesting. You know, in the note you received. You know, it's talking about. I've actually found, now maybe it's not, but I think that we've got a really almost a bit of a golden age in terms of male jazz vocal. We've got more really excellent male jazz vocalists than I think that there's been in quite a while. I mean, I'm thinking about folks like you. I'm thinking about Tyreek McDowell, whom I mentioned. Thinking about Michael Mayo. I'm thinking about. Look, there's nothing I love more than a female jazz vocalist, but for so many years, there basically was like Kurt Elling and then nobody else. And I think that, like, you know, there have been at least, you know, 6 to maybe a dozen great up and coming male jazz voices that I've heard. And I think that's wonderful. Who out there do you admire? Who out there among your peers do you think is, you know, do you listen to?
We're talking about male vocalists?
Yeah.
I mean, there so many of the people that you named. I mean, first of all, Michael Mayo, also a queer man openly. And we're so different. And I admire his understanding of harmony and his like agility and dexterity. It like makes me feel like an old computer when I listen to him. I feel like it takes me like 15 minutes to start up, and he's like scatting and doing all of this amazing stuff and reinterpreting these songs in such a beautiful way. Obviously, Tyreek is like the rising star of male jazz voice right now. I wouldn't even say he's rising. He's just a star, you know?
He's there. Yeah, I mean, he's there. Yeah.
He is there. And Satchel Vasandani, I think, has been in the game for a really long time. Him and Kurt Elling, I think, were sort of similar timelines, actually. Satchel maybe came a little bit later.
Now, I think you and Satchel are quite different, but what's your distinctiveness is... Like, there's no one else who sounds like Satchel, and there's no one else who I think really. You say Chet Baker. I mean, I understand the Chet Baker comparison, but there is a singular sort of distinctive quality to you, and with Satchel too. I think there's no one out there like him. He's one of one. So
there's a young man named Declan Cashman who is currently in school at Temple University, and he is somebody that I think.
My hometown.
I think he's going to be a huge star. A huge star. He is also a young queer person, and you know, confides in me and seeks out my confidence on you know, my thoughts on representation in the music, and reached out to me early on and said that he really looked up to me. I look up to him. I think he sounds amazing. There is there's Tyreek, there's Satchel, there's Michael Mayo, there's obviously you've got Benny Benack too. I mean, people.
Oh, Benny's wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, and I think a lot of people can look at him as just a trumpeter, but I mean, when Benny really gives a sincere vocal delivery, I mean, I've spent some of the best singing, because when you have all of that jazz language and that capacity to scat and do all of those things, you know, I mean, I think what's beautiful about it is that, like, I don't think any one of us is actually doing anything similar.
Right. Yeah.
You know, I think that, like, Kurt and Michael Mayo, and even Tyreek in a way lean very modern. I mean, and I think Tyreek too is like very futuristically Black, which I think is like really beautiful and needs to happen in the music. There's this like, it's like, there's a word for it. I mean, I think it's like this. It's like what jazz was doing at the time when jazz was doing jazz. It's like taking the Black music and like moving the needle forward in its like representation and beautifulness of how Black the music really is. And I think that like Tyreek really is able to stand in a space in his career where he can sing songs like Under a Blanket of Blue and give this beautiful delivery and pay homage to the history of the music. But I also think he's doing a lot of things that are really celebratory in a way that is like unapologetically Black and in your face and spiritual and really beautiful, you know?
No, the Pharoah Sanders, Leon Thomas stuff that he does is awesome. But you know, another thing about you is, and you're talking about guys like Michael Mayo, who has such a because of do you feel as though you're still developing jazz vocabulary like all the time?
Oh my God. I don't even feel like I've, like, in so many ways, that's the part that makes me wish I went to school. I think that there's jazz vocalists come out of school like little scatting robots now. They come out of school and they know so much. And I have finally reached a point I used to hate myself for not sounding like them. I had such imposter syndrome, even like young people. I mean, like, look at Kate Cordham, who just won the Sarah Vaughan vocal competition, who is astronomically talented. I mean, and wonderful. Has so much jazz language and can scat and do all of these things, and then you add the skill of like they can write charts, they can write arrangements, they get these skill sets that are born. But the one thing that people like that always come to me with is like, I wish I could tell a story like you. I wish I could embody a song like you can. I wish I could connect with an audience. I wish I had the banter in between songs, that you're able to weave a story together, or the artistic vision, or, you know, it's like that type of, you can't, I mean, look, it comes with, you might want to create a new link for us. We only have 3 minutes left.
I will. Let's go to a song soon,
sure.
And then I'll create a new link. But
great.
And I'll come. I've got more ideas to continue on the conversation. But let's go right now to one that is particularly appropriate for the season. Again, coming from one of the several EPs you'll be sort of releasing seasonally over the course of the year. There's a tune originally written by Al Rinker and Floyd Huddleston, first recorded in 1949 by Gordon Jenkins and his orchestra. You're joined here by Addison Fry on piano, Jacob Chung, saxophone, David Snyder, trumpet, Alex Safi on bass, Gary Carcuzzo on drums. This is Richard Cortez with December, and it's Breaking Jazz. So let me email you a fresh link, all right?
Here on KSDS Jazz Radio San Diego 88.3. It's true, it's all true.
Now, you know, Richard, the voice you just heard on that promo there of Will Friedwald, he lives in New York City as well. prolific writer and especially knowledgeable about vocalists. If you don't know Will, you need to hook up with Will. In fact, if you've played Birdland, you probably have come into contact with Will at one point or another, because I believe, I don't even know if he basically lives at Birdland from my understanding, but he's a great guy and a very, very knowledgeable but also passionate fan of vocal jazz. So he's a guy to get to know if you haven't yet.
Cool. Well, definitely. I think you mentioned him to me in an email or something before, but
I did because we had this special called Channeling the Living, and it was all basically focusing on the younger generation of jazz vocalists. And I was very pleased that I was able to introduce him to names that the great Will Friedwald had not become familiar with yet, and yours was one of those names. And I believe he left quite impressed. So I want to make sure that you guys hook up at one point or another. I should let our audience know here, Breaking Jazz, that we are joined this evening by the wonderful vocalist based out of New York City by way of Miami, Florida, Richard Cortez. Now, Richard is out with, it's hard to believe, your third album now, Standards in Orbit, which
fourth.
Is it? Well, so it was, what was before Mood
Swings? No, it was Mood Swings, A Kavlin and Cortez Christmas.
Oh, right. I forgot
Nightbird, Standards in Orbit. And that was all in 1 year.
Now, I'll tell you something. You brought up Kate Cordham during the last set. I love the stuff that you did with Kate and June Kavlin, and that Sun House Singers group. I love that stuff.
And Joey Bianco, yeah.
Right, Joey Bianco as well. Yes, right. Wonderful stuff.
I mean, June, the record that June and I made is some of the stuff I'm most proud of. I mean, I even for holiday records, and that record had some heavy hitters on there. It was Reuben Fox, Jochen Ruckert, Dylan Shamat, and Luther Allison. And that band, I mean, we really wanted to make some recordings that sounded like old holiday music.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what, but that relationship with La Reserve and the vocalists, some great music has come out of their catalog. Yeah. I've got to give
you got Katie George on that label. You've got June on that label. They distribute Kate through Bandstand Presents as well.
Lucy Yaguzarian. Are you familiar with Lucy Yaguzarian?
Hands down, one of my favorite singers of all time. And in fact, her and I she's
a goddess. I mean, she's just a goddess.
You know that I'm on her second record.
I did. Which one is that?
It's a song. The record's called In Her Words. It's the one with Venetia Gould.
Oh, I love that. That's a great album.
So you know that I'm the guy that sings the blues with her. I'm the creepy street pervert.
Oh, you're the. Yes, I know that tune. Right, she's right. She's been being hit on while she's. Yeah, you're the street pervert.
That's me. And Venetia they were looking through male singers in New York, and Venetia was like, you need somebody that sounds not like a jazz singer. You need somebody that sounds like a pervert in the street. And then Venetia recommended me.
Well, that's why I said, that's why I said to you last time you were on the show, you've got Broadway quality to me. Like I could see you, you're telling me about that there are probably a lot of musical theater folks who feel insecure about singing jazz or whatever, but I could see you going the other way and maybe hitting the stage at some point.
And look at Kurt Elling now in Hadestown. I mean, I think that Kurt really is doing something right now by bridging that gap between jazz identity. And I think there's like a lot of stigma in straight ahead jazz and in contemporary jazz music about cabaret. And for me, especially, like, I always feel, I'm very quick to feel offended when, like, I'll be at Smalls. Perfect example. This has happened to me multiple times. I'll be at Smalls. And in my first interaction with someone, they'll be like, oh, hey, man, how you doing? I'm like, good. They're like, you a musician? I'm like, I'm a singer. And they're like, oh, cabaret? And the only reason why they ask that is because I'm gay presenting. They can hear it in my speaking voice, or I'm animated when I speak, or whatever. And it's like, no, I'm a jazz vocalist. So for me, recently I've been getting a lot of people, for some strange reason, bringing up Mark Murphy around me. They're, oh, do you like Mark Murphy? Oh, you sound like Mark Murphy. Oh, have you ever checked out Mark Murphy? And it's like, Mark Murphy and I sound nothing alike.
Nothing. No, not alike at all.
The only reason why you're comparing us is because Mark was also a queer person, but perhaps behind closed doors. He's no longer with us, so I don't want to speak on his behalf. But you know, that sort of thing is like, that stigma or those microaggressions are things that I've always had a hard time with in the jazz scene, as I've tried to carve out a space for myself. Now, I look up to Mark Murphy. I think he's an incredible artist, but I just don't think we sound anything alike. Not nearly alike enough for you to make a comparison to my face, you know?
Yeah, it's just kind of thoughtless. Like, you know how many white basketball players have been compared to Larry Bird? You know, why? For
it just seems
no
a little
reason.
like, it's a little weird. And so, but getting back to the Broadway thing, now here's Kurt Elling, one of the most respected, celebrated, actually considered jazz vocalists. And he was like, I'm going to do a Broadway show.
Yeah.
And I think it really throws the whole thing on its head, you know? And it's such a double standard, because as jazz singers, we're expected to be so jazz focused. And yet how many jazz instrumentalists go and work on Broadway in the pit? Nobody ever says anything to them about playing these tunes down and just reading these changes, because everybody needs to survive. But God forbid a jazz singer is animated or tells a story or occupies a lyric in a way that's theatrical, which frankly, like, I mean, my favorite jazz singers are, you take basic, look at a record that is a staple in this, like Chet Baker Sings. You don't think that there's a mood to that record of somber, sullen, sad longing? I mean, there's a through line there.
No, absolutely, and that's why I make that sort of comment about theater, because, you know, as you know, there are singers, and then there are performers who, like you say, inhabit a lyric, and you are gifted at that. You know, I think of you. I think of, you know, Cecile McLaurin Salvant. I think of even when Veronica Swift is singing jazz, she's gifted at
Veronica Swift tells a story no matter what she's doing. Her rock and roll stuff, when she's doing, and what's interesting about her is she's another person that I think really is pushing the boundary of what it is to have an identity within this music, because a lot of people scoff at change. A lot of people scoff at you don't do what the jazz audience wants, and the jazz audience starts to attack you like white blood cells. They are so protective of these dead people that sang this music and did this music, and it's like, well, those people are no longer with us. So a lot of times, like, I know a lot of people that don't listen to their peers, that don't listen to contemporary jazz music. They only listen to, you know, old singers, or they only talk about old singers as people that inspire them. But Ella Fitzgerald is not going to receive my compliments. I mean, I look up to, I pay homage and respect, and obviously I have multiple Ella Fitzgerald records. She's an icon. I'm wearing a Nancy Wilson shirt. She's no longer with us. But, you know, it's I think it's also about lifting up the people that are around us, instead of, you know, it's a balance between looking to the past and also celebrating the present.
Well, and also I believe wholeheartly that the icons that you mentioned who are no longer with us would very much like to feel that the music they gave their life to is continuing to evolve and is not this static thing. Because when they created the music, their goal was for it to not be this static thing, to continue to evolve.
I would bet my next paycheck on the fact that Sarah Vaughan or Billie Holiday would be like, don't listen to my records.
Well, it's not that. It's just the idea of, like, look, I know that if Miles Davis were to come back today and be seated right next to me, and if I were playing something from Kind of Blue, he would say, what year is this? I'd say it's 2025. He'd say, what the hell are you playing that for? you know?
Right.
So
Or furthermore, I mean, Billie Holiday. I'm reading a book. I'm reading a book about the end of her life. I've been reading it for God, a year now. I'm
Richard,
such
I
a slow
should let you
reader.
know I've got about like I've only got I've gone well actually no I'm okay. I've got 4 minutes left on my program. I could talk to you all day about all of this stuff.
Well, I just think the point is that these people that are no longer with us, they deserve all of the respect and adoration because they set they created they made the mold, you know. But the mold continues to shift and change. And I think when you see people like Kate, who on her sophomore record put out original songs and is so inspired by Cecile, and we all tap into each other. You know, I talk to Cecile on a regular basis and send her my concerns and my records and all of those things, and you'd be surprised how, you know, Sullivan Fortner all the time tells me like, man, I didn't like my playing on this or whatever. So it's all about, I think, being aware of the fact that, I mean, at the end of the day, we're all our biggest critics, and nobody's hearing the music the way that the artist is hearing it, you know. And I'm just grateful that you played some of my music tonight off my new project, and that we were able to talk about some of this stuff.
Absolutely. And you know what, man? This is something I say all the time, and maybe you believe it, maybe it resonates with you, but history it's not over. We're living in it. And I think that's an important thing to recognize. And I think that musicians like yourself innately realize that, you know, whether it's conscious or not, because of the music and the art that you put out there. So I appreciate you immensely. And like I said, I've been a big fan from the beginning. Going to continue to bump your stuff whenever we get it in. And I thank you so much for joining us tonight. I want to end with one more from you, and this is a tune that I absolutely love. Jerome Kern, Oscar Hammerstein. It's you in the trio context, like you mentioned before, with Addison on piano, Reuben Fox on saxophone, Richard Cortez. The song is You. You are the man, and you're welcome back here on Breaking Jazz anytime, Richard. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Let's do it again. We'll talk soon.
Absolutely. Take care, man.
2, 3.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks for having me, Matt. I'll talk to you soon.
My pleasure. Take care, Richard. All the best.